From Columbia, in high definition, this is WIS News 10 Awareness.
Does race matter when it comes to getting into college? Is affirmative action necessary anymore? We tackle the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision involving the state of Michigan. Plus, expanding the Black business circle, becoming an entrepreneur and networking with others to find your niche and use your talents. The Black Expo is back. Good morning and thanks for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. A U.S. Supreme Court decision a few weeks ago upheld a ban in the state of Michigan on affirmative action in higher education. In 2006, voters in Michigan passed a referendum to ban race from being considered in the admissions process for public colleges and universities. Last month, a 6-2 decision said that ban is legal. I spoke to USC law professor Derek Black about this decision and its implications nationwide. Thank you for joining us this morning to talk about affirmative action. Let's start with what was the purpose? What was it designed for?
Well, affirmative action really has a couple of different lives. Its original life was a direct remedy to intentional discrimination coming out of the civil rights movement. So during the late 70s and early 80s, there was the idea that we really need to reverse a lot of the historical discrimination that's occurred in this country. More recently, we've moved towards sort of the idea that diverse environments are good for schools, they're good for the workplace, they're good for neighborhoods. And so what we're really talking about in many of what we might call affirmative action programs today are not remedies for past discrimination, but how do we build a better school? How do we build a better community?
Let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court decision that involved the state of Michigan. What did that decision say? Well,
it's an extremely complicated decision, so I'll say it as simply as I can, which is simply that if the voters of Michigan want to ban the consideration of race in admissions, they're free to do so. There was a decision in about 2002 called Grutter versus Bollinger in which the court said that universities have a compelling interest in forming a diverse student body. And once they said that, universities felt free in moving forward and considering race and trying to build a more diverse campus. There was backlash against that, particularly in Michigan, since that was the epicenter of the debate to begin with. And Ward Connerly came from California to help pass a ballot initiative to ban the consideration of race. So the Supreme Court says you can consider it, and the voters are saying, well, we want to ban that consideration. And so they did that shortly after the Supreme Court had said, yes, you can operate affirmative action. And this most recent decision says, well, if you don't want it anymore, you don't have to have it.
Right. So do you think diversity will suffer now at the public institutions?
Well, it's certainly going to take a bit of a hit. When we've seen these type of decisions issued, for instance, there was a case called Hopwood versus Texas in the 1990s that dealt with the University of Texas, and as soon as they banned race there, diversity immediately went down in the state of Texas. Texas's response to that was the top 10% plan, whereby the top 10% of each graduating high school class would be automatically admitted to the University of Texas. So what we will probably see is a short-term hit to diversity. The question is, will Michigan and the university come up with another system that sort of works around the new rules, so to speak?
Now, with affirmative action in place, some people argue that that is discrimination, but exactly how did it work? I mean, obviously race was a factor, but how did they use that in their admissions process?
Yeah, I mean, those who oppose the consideration of race say that considering race is discriminating. I think from the university's position, they're considering race to counteract the effects of discrimination. So to put it simply, all test scores are not equal. There is racial bias in the SAT. There is racial bias in the educational opportunities that you receive in K through 12 education. There is socioeconomic bias as well. So that children of higher income or middle income family or have two parents with PhDs, if their child scores in the 90th percentile on the SAT, when we look at a low-income student who speaks Spanish at home and they score in the 80th percentile, that student may have a lower score, but that ELL student of a low-income background, I would tell you today as an educator, has more capacity, more potential than that student who has a higher score, but their score is higher simply because they come from a family with better equipped to give them things to help them do well on the test. So a lot of these tests, we think of them as though they're objective, but they're really reflecting inequalities in society. And considering race, considering language status, considering poverty, those things counteract that.
If not race, what other standards or factors should be considered in the admissions process?
Well, poverty is one of the big ones. Ultimately, I mean, that's part of the debate, and I think, for right or wrong, President Obama sort of helped set this off by saying, well, I'm not sure Sasha and Malia ought to have race considered because they've got all the advantages in the world. Well, they do have all the advantages in the world, but they're still minorities, and I'm sure they experience things that I didn't experience in my lifetime and my friends didn't experience. So, you know, but when the president says something like that, all of a sudden there's this idea, well, maybe we ought to be a little bit more nuanced.
Really resonates.
Yeah, and I do think we should be nuanced. I mean, I do think that rural children in South Carolina, regardless of their race, are disadvantaged, right? And we ought to consider that. And if we're really going to be fair, if we're really going to think about merit, not how rich your family is, if we're going to think about merit, then we have to consider those other factors as well.
Right, and perhaps really the process should start well before the child is considering college and trying to maybe equal the playing field earlier on.
Yeah, well, you know, 20 years ago when I was in, almost 20 years ago when I was in school, you know, I said, look, affirmative action, that's a really sort of sorry excuse to remedy all of our other problems in society because our schools are so racially unequal, socioeconomically unequal. The truth is we don't have the stomach to fix K through 12 education, so what we try to do is put Band-Aids on it in K through 12. That's not to say we shouldn't put the Band-Aid on in K through 12, but the injury, as you say, really occurs long before then.
Do you think other states could possibly start to implement a ban? We know 7 states currently now have this in place. Do you think it could spread?
Well, I think that the impetus to ban the consideration of race really was on the upswing in 2002, 2003 when the court said, if you want to consider race, you can. I don't know that there's a huge political push now that the Supreme Court has said, you guys can do it. They already thought they could do it. They already passed those bans. I mean, there may be 1 or 2 more states that might ban it, but I don't see there being a lot of push there. I think it's really the civil rights community that's more upset by this decision that wants to push for ways to work around or sort of counteract the negative effects of this decision in places like Michigan.
What is the major takeaway or the lesson that we should be learning from this?
Well, I think we shouldn't worry so much about the Supreme Court. I think what we really ought to think about are, what does it mean to be qualified to go to school? What does it mean to be meritorious? And the one interesting thing that happened in Texas is when they said, you can't use race anymore. And Texas said, well, what is merit in the state of Texas? And they said, well, we think being disadvantaged in lots of other ways other than race is part of merit. And we think that what they adopt is what they call a personal achievement index. So they didn't just look at what your GPA was. They didn't just look at your SAT. They said, where did you come from in life? Right? What happened before you got this score? And so that we want to contextualize that score. After they instituted the Personal Achievement Index in Texas, and the Supreme Court blessed the consideration of race in 2002 in Grutter, they then began considering race again. But I think Texas only got to that place where they could think about merit in a broader way that looked at many factors that take race out of the conversation, because race is such a charged issue that they couldn't think about merit as long as race was part of that conversation. But once they talked about merit for about 5 or 6 years, they were okay with bringing race back into the picture again. So, you know, I don't know whether the voters in Michigan, oddly enough, are quite as progressive as the regents in Texas, but we'll see. You know, we do learn things through adversity.
Right. Well, Professor Black, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Still to come on Awareness, 17 years and counting. It's vendors, performers, and so much more. The Black Expo is back and bringing with it the Black Male Summit. Welcome back to Awareness. The 17th annual Black Expo is coming back to Columbia. There is a whole week of events starting tomorrow leading up to the Expo, which is on Saturday, May 17th. Joining us now is Darren Thomas of Thomas Media Group, which produces the Black Expo and Black Pages USA. Also, Jaquetta Chapman with the group Mothers of Black Boys and Jimmy Wright with the Concerned Black Men organization. Thank you all for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Darren, a whole week of events. Take us through the lineup.
Let's see. We kicked the week off Monday. It's our annual Young Gifted and Black event, which is targeted young professionals in the area. On Tuesday night, it's our Power of Praise. We're partnering with First Nazareth Baptist Church here in Columbia. And historically for us, this has been an event where we partner with youth ministries or the young adult ministries with a lot of our faith partners in the community for young people to express their faith. We skip a night, and then on to Thursday is our business summit, which starts that luncheon. It's a luncheon that day. Our kickoff reception that Thursday night. Friday morning is our charity golf tournament, our 14th annual charity golf tournament. Friday night, of course, the Taste of Black Columbia. which has truly been a highlight and become a highlight. And then, of course, on Saturday, the big day, the 17th annual Columbia Black Expo.
Right. Now, what's new to this expo?
Well, and let me say this. We've got what folks are accustomed to. You've got your
right.
celebs, Jay Ellis from The Game, who happens to be from Sumter, South Carolina. We're doing the old school hip hop pioneers with Kumo D and Big Daddy Kane, the OMG Girls. We'll have one of our gospel artists there as well. Congressman Jim Clyburn will be there signing his publication, his newest book. But the new aspect of this year's expo is our Black Male Summit. And Megan, this was something that we looked at sometime last year. We actually used Jacksonville, Florida as a test market. We really started to ask ourselves, as the hosts and promoters of Black Expo, what were we doing to really empower and change the lives
right.
of people in the community? It's fun to come, enjoy the entertainment, network, all those things are great. The business aspects of Black Expo is important, but you know what? Black males and the survival and the thriving of young black males is also an economic issue. And
right.
we really asked ourselves, what are we doing to empower and change the lives? So we looked at the framework of Black Male Summit in other cities, said, you know what, Black Expo could really serve as a platform to bring the concerned black men to really promote what they're doing and serve as a
right.
platform to giving
right.
the resources
You're
in the
helping
community.
to add more substance to
Absolutely.
this expo.
Absolutely.
And Michael Bazin and Bow Wow are going to be the hosts of this summit, and Jaquetta and Jimmy, you guys are both panelists
yes.
on this summit.
Yes.
Now, what are some major issues you want to bring across to this audience this week?
Megan, I would love to talk more about fatherlessness, gang violence, the ills of social media, as well as the academic arena or aspect of black males. I would love for the audience, the people that are coming out to the Black Expo, to really engage in some meaningful dialogue about how we can change and alter the image of the black male.
Right. What do you think some of the barriers are or the stumbling blocks are in this conversation, Jimmy?
I think social political, the conditions that we're up under as men, black men, as well as what our young men come up under. So if we don't understand the social political aspects of that and what that looks like for us, then you never really get down to the baseline, to the foundation of where we need to be.
Right.
And so that's what we're looking at.
And a lot of times it's about the rhetoric. We talk about what needs to be done, but how do we actually turn this into action?
Megan, I think, just from having the conversation, having the dialogue, bringing the community to see what's going on from first line, kind of a first line defense perspective, will really just hit home for some of the issues that our communities are experiencing with black males. Just having the dialogue is probably first. And then once we have the dialogue, we're able to showcase and just show some of the programs and opportunities that we provide to the community to address these issues.
Right. Now, Darren, you want everyone to have a good time, enjoy themselves, come on out, but what's the takeaway you want them to leave with?
Well, let me say this. There are a couple of things, and Jaquetta and Jimmy are right. When we had this very similar platform in Charleston, we also used it as a platform to get rid of some of the misnomers out there, that there are more black men in prison than there is in college. That is so untrue.
That's true.
It's almost 3 times as many African American men in college, according to the latest statistics, as are there incarcerated.
But we don't focus on that as much.
Absolutely. No. We hear the negative. The one big thing, with the help of Jimmy and Jaquetta and so many others, we're putting together a black male survival guide that will be disseminated at Black Expo for all of our attendees. You may not have a challenge right now. I was just telling Jaquetta and Jimmy, there are things that I'm dealing with my 14 and 13-year-old that were unimaginable to me just 6 months ago. Things that I'm having to really force the conversation, talk them through, helping them to make life, just quality decisions. Well, if I'm plagued with an issue now that maybe Jimmy and Jaquetta or some of our other panelists might be able to help me address.
Can reach those issues.
Absolutely.
It's a great platform to really start this, or I should say continue this dialogue.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to have ticket information, we're going to have the schedule of events all on our Awareness Facebook page. When Awareness returns, I spent some time in the kitchen with a caterer showing off her culinary skills ahead of the Taste of Black Columbia, and we put a spin on a Southern classic. Welcome back to Awareness. Joining us now is Lisa Abel with the Perfectly Plated Catering Company. She is one of the many caterers and chefs that will be featured during the Taste of Black Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now you have prepared a special dish for us.
Yes,
and you're going to show us how to make it.
Yes, ma'am.
Now what are we making today?
We're going to do a Southern tradition with the collard greens, but we kind of add a spin on it to throw in some leeks in it.
Okay.
To give it a more of a different taste, but not overpowering to the dish.
Right.
And we're going to I've prepared a sirloin steak in our own special marinade sauce with some mashed sweet potatoes with molasses.
Okay.
So
it sounds great. Now, what kind of marinade are you using with the steak?
Okay, sure. We have our, of course, some steak sauce. You can choose any steak sauce that you prefer. We have that. We have some garlic powder, some ginger powder, apple juice, and some burgundy wine.
Okay, it's
Yes.
an interesting combination.
Yes.
And so what's our first step? What do we do?
Okay, first we're going to do, I like to tell people it's good you can prepare this in advance. So it kind of saves time when you're working all day trying to get home and get things
Right.
settled.
We're all
Okay?
busy.
Yes. This is our, we have a cup of apple juice, a half a cup of our burgundy wine, steak sauce, and we have about a half a teaspoon of ginger and a tablespoon of garlic powder.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna whisk these items together. This is what makes our marinade. And if you have fresh garlic, that would be great also.
add
But
to it.
yeah, but
Really,
powdered-
whatever you desire.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And here's the product here. This has been marinating for about 4 hours here.
Is that a typical time that
Yes.
you should be doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Or less. I just like the taste without having to use like steak sauce on top of the meat.
Right.
And this is, you see, it thickens as it sets in the refrigerator.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Let's get our olive oil. We're gonna line the pan. Okay. Excuse me one second.
Your tongs?
Please. Yes, please. Thank you.
I can be your assistant.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. We're gonna set that on there.
All right.
All right. Excuse me one second, leave it there.
Okay.
I like to turn the sides over rather quickly. That way it won't get burned and cooked too fast.
Right,
But just
right.
kind of let it cook. So we're going to turn it down here.
Right.
And while that is cooking, we're going to move over here to the collard greens and the leeks. Okay. Same thing again. We're going to add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. We're going to throw in our collard greens. That's kind of been coarsely chopped.
Okay.
Excuse me. Okay.
And you keep a little bit of the stem.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They make them pre-packaged like this, so it's much easier than cutting like your grandmother used to do, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to throw in our coarsely chopped leeks. And here's a secret to this recipe. Few red pepper flakes.
Okay. Give it a little bit of bite.
Yes, ma'am, it does. It does. And you can add more. One important thing about this dish, you don't want to add salt. Because
Okay.
once it cooks down a little bit more, we add a chicken broth inside of it.
And that has the
yes,
salt
ma'am.
in it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, is this your first time with the Taste of Black Columbia?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And why did you decide to take part?
I wanted to get more exposure from my business and just to meet and make contacts with other people. So,
Right. And this
yes.
will be a gathering of a bunch of small business owners. You
Yes.
yourself obviously are one.
Yes.
And why did you decide to take that leap? And what have been some of your challenges in getting started?
Okay, I've always had a passion for cooking. Since I was a younger girl, like 12 years old, I've always had a passion for cooking and never know what direction to go in. It took me 2 college degrees and student loan debt to figure out what I
Sure.
wanted to do in life. Excuse me one second. And some of the challenges I would say for me has been marketing myself and the business.
Right.
And just trying to make those contacts. And
Well, obviously you'll be doing that at the Taste of Black Columbia this
ma'am.
week.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this is cooking down a little bit.
Yes, I just added the chicken broth in.
Okay. Let's take a look at the finished product.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Start to finish, about how long did it take to prepare that meal?
Honestly, if you do your prep work in advance, about 20 minutes,
Okay.
honestly. And this is the finished product.
Okay. Wow, this looks excellent.
And that's the garlic, the sweet potatoes.
Right on the side. And
Yes,
how do
ma'am.
people prepare those?
Okay,
real quickly?
we bake the sweet potato in the oven. A little bit of cinnamon, molasses, about a half a tablespoon of molasses, and we add some melted butter here.
Oh,
And
great.
you mix it all together.
Okay. All right, great. Now, I have to talk about these cupcakes over here
Okay,
because I didn't
sure.
realize these were cupcakes.
Yes.
Explain this to us.
Okay, I'm a part of a co-op called Meet Plan Design, and we cater to wedding parties or brides and grooms, should I say. And we're looking for a new idea. I was looking for a new idea, something to expand and something different to attract my clients. And I came up with, the cupcake bouquet.
It doesn't even look like cupcakes.
Yes, and they're just not edible, but they are edible at your wedding reception or bridal shower or anything you would like to celebrate.
All right, well, you do a little bit of everything.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for being with us. This looks like an excellent meal. We will have more information in terms of ticket prices for the Taste of Black Columbia on our Awareness Facebook page. We'll be right back with a final thought. This looks wonderful. Race has proven, particularly in recent days, to be a factor in America. Whether it needs to be considered for college admissions, there needs to be equal opportunities across the board, in school, in the workforce, and even on the basketball court. When we can get to a place of equality and unity, we as a people can really thrive. Part of achieving that goal is working together, supporting each other, helping to grow businesses, and showcase the very talents that can benefit our entire community. We would like to thank all of our guests this morning: Derek Black, Darren Thomas, Jaquetta Chapman, Jimmy Wright, and Lisa Abel. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.